Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video we're going to Florida. Because of course we are. Actually, let me correct myself. We're going to HE double hockey sticks, because in this story, we got, dare I even say it, witchcraft and a blue moon. Not the beer. So prepare yourselves, because we got a spooky. And as you can imagine, the media and even the authorities went just buck wild on that angle. But, you know, as we see time and time again, the real motive, which was, it was much more base than rituals and, you know, hocus pocus. Right, so, let's, hop on our broomsticks or whatever. So first of all, where exactly in America's ding-a-ling are we going? Pensacola. In the year 2015, there lived a family, the Smith family. Good luck finding them in the address book. In that family was Von Seal Smith, and she lived with her two fully grown sons, John Smith and Richard Smith. Von Seal had another son too, the oldest, 58-year-old Donald Hartung. He had a different father and didn't live with the family, but did live just down the road. Von Seal was 76, Richard, 49, worked for Homeland Security, and John Smith, 47, worked at a local Walmart. Donald worked as a security officer at a hospital in Pensacola. So, what happened? Why are we talking about it? Well, this. On Friday, July 31st, the year 2015, it was a blue moon day. A blue moon is when you have two full moons in one calendar month. It's not actually blue, which is disappointing. So, in the late morning hours of the 31st of July, the Pensacola Police Department popped by 4605 Deerfield Drive. They were popping by as a co-worker of Richard's who, you know, worked in Homeland Security. Well, they said, you know, Richard hadn't showed up for work for a couple of days, you know, hadn't said anything, which was not like him, and they couldn't contact him on the phone or any way else. After all, Richard worked on some sensitive projects and codes and so forth, working on such, you know, top secret stuff. You can imagine his coworkers were concerned about, well. So they were worried and asked the police to do a welfare check on the Smith abode. When the police arrived, there were two cars in the driveway. One was Richard's, the other one was Von Seal's, so it seemed like people were home. John Smith didn't drive to work at Walmart. His mother drove him, as John was, his mother said, a little slow. Richard lived with them, of course, as he looked after them both. So it seemed like, you know, people were home. They were, you know, just not in the way you'd hope. So with no answer, the police entered the home. Inside, they found a grisly scene. The house was a mess, hot, stinky, and there were piles and piles of clothing. Doing a bit of the old autumn cleaning? Well, they may have thought that at first, till they saw a foot sticking out from under the clothing. They found the bodies of Von Seal, John, and Richard under separate piles. They all had blunt force trauma to the head, their throats cut open, and Richard had also been shot in the head. There was no sign of forced entry to the home, though a back gate had been left open. It didn't seem like much of a robbery, not much was stolen, and the police ended up discovering a significant amount of dollar bills in a safe. It would take 5 days to go through everything in the house. It was, well, they were hoarders. But the investigation sprung up immediately into looking at who could be responsible for this triple homicide. Now, the family were known as quite reclusive. You know, the two sons who lived there, they didn't have families of their own, they didn't have any kids, and they weren't married. And nobody kind of really knew much about them. They didn't get out much. I mean, that certainly seems true judging by the state of the house. Von Seal, it seems, literally never left the house after her husband passed.
Now that the crime scene tape is down, the Smith home on Deerfield Drive looks just like all the other houses in this quiet neighborhood. But it's not. Neighbors like Meeks Willard are shaken by the murders of a mother and two of her sons.
Early indications were that this wasn't no, random killing. And when the police held a press conference, listen up, it was pitchfork time.
The elements of this case are odd at best. We have a very reclusive family. Obviously, we've canvassed the neighborhood, spoken to people that have lived there for years and years. Neighbors have related to us that they've never met members of this family, although they've lived there for years. The method of death, we believe, through Dr. Minyard's office, was blunt force trauma. We believe the weapon was a claw hammer. Multiple blows were struck on each and every victim. Their throats were slit also, each and every victim. Richard Thomas also suffered a gunshot wound entering his right ear and exiting behind the neck. We believe that that was an incapacitating move on the attacker's part. By the way, both of the sons are very large men, meaning very tall, obviously potentially very physically powerful men. Initial research has led us to believe that there is a potential that it was a ritualistic killing.
Whoa, ritualistic killing? Go on.
The method of the murder, blunt force trauma, slit throats, positions of bodies, and then our person of interest has some ties to a faith and or religion that is indicative of that. Those of you that follow any of that will also note that the time of death, we believe, on Tuesday also coincides with what's referred to as a blue moon, which occurs every 3 years. It's witchcraft. I'll say that right now.
Nothing scarier than witchcraft. People got hanged for that a couple of 100 years ago. And the literal, lunatic, the witch, could still be out there massacring families, killing people, eating people probably, They do that, I've seen it in the movie.
The victims of a ritual killing, police say, involved witchcraft.
Bizarre story out of Florida. 3 people are found brutally murdered in their homes, but here's where it gets strange. Police say the killing may be connected to witchcraft.
As witches, we don't do human sacrifice. It's strictly prohibited.
The police, from the way the scene was, they had their suspicions and they had their questions. And so they wanted to speak with, the only remaining family member who just happened to live 3 miles down the road, Donald Wayne Hartung Sr. Donald lived by himself and worked the 3 to 11 shift as a security guard. He has a son, Donald Jr., and was married before, but, the, before part will tell you that went south, and so too did his relationship with his son. He did, however, have a pretty good relationship with, his family. They lived right down the road. He would see them all the time. He would go at least once a week and cook dinner, for the family. He'd cook dinner, cook whatever John wanted to eat, Donald would cook it, because he was just a nice guy. And Donald was over at his family's house before, the Smiths stopped showing up, to the world of the living. He had been over on Tuesday, the 28th of July, as he was every Tuesday, and himself and John prepared a dinner of fried chicken, corn, green beans, biscuits, and fries. He left the house around 6 p.m. before Richard arrived home from his job, and that was it. He never saw Richard that day, and last he saw, they were all fine and dandy. But from what the police saw in the home and the fact that Donald, that would make him, the last person to see them alive. So the police spoke with Donald the day the bodies were found.
Have a seat right there, man. I'll be right back. Oh. I guess you know why you're down here to talk about your mom and your brothers, okay? As they told you out there on the scene, they are deceased, okay? But before we talk about all that, I want to read you your rights, because I don't know what's going on yet, and I just want you to have these in mind while we talk, okay? All right. Be aware of them, okay? What's your relationship with John and Richard? You have good relationships with them, or?
Yeah, we have a great relationship.
When was the last time you saw your family?
Tuesday, I always go over on Tuesday, take my dog and let her run. And I made dinner.
Did they tell you how your folks, your family over there was killed?
Killed. They said they were deceased, and they never told me how they were killed.
They're dead. And it looks like they were killed.
Killed.
Mm-hmm.
How was they killed?
They looked like they were shot.
Shot.
Mm-hmm.
How was that?
Well, it looked like they were shot. It's hard to tell because there was a lot of clothes on top of them.
Clothes on top of them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Were they having problems with anybody? Was John having problems with anybody or our team?
Not recently. Not that I know
Were you having problems with them at all?
of. No. Any problems with them.
So something didn't happen when you were over there Tuesday night and you killed them?
No. Nothing happened.
You sure?
Yes.
If something happened, now's the time to tell them.
I would not tell my mother and my brother. I mean, why would I do something like that?
I don't know. I don't know. You've shown no emotion the whole time you've been in here. I mean, it's like you almost prepared yourself for this. You've had days to prepare yourself for this.
So I'll show plenty of emotion when the time's right. I don't know nothing about this. This is the first time I've ever heard any of this stuff. You're talking about they was dead, shot?
Yeah. And you're gonna sit here and not show any emotion whatsoever?
I've got emotion, sir.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
Kind of feeling like I'm being accused of something here. I am accusing you of doing it. I think you do. Would you give me a sample of your DNA?
Of course. Have any information about what's going on?
No, we're over there looking through the house trying to figure out what's going on.
My family's still there.
Yeah, they're not going anywhere. They're dead. Do you have a problem with me going through your house and looking to see if you have any guns in there?
No.
As you can see, the detective was really not in the mood for this shit. He must have just fucking hated witches. Bloody witches at it again. And so then they went and searched Donald's home, which led them to discovering, well, all of this. Looks like some Satanist shit to me. No, it wasn't. Donald Hartung was a practicing Wiccan. I know nothing about Wiccan other than the name. I believe it's quite peaceful though, so hey, educate in the comments. But to the police, this is some sick shit. You know, it's obviously some kind of like spooky, magical blood orgy ritual. Blue moon. It was on a blue moon. They interviewed him again. He admitted to being a Wiccan, and he celebrated the blue moon. And the investigators really tried to get him to admit to sacrifices.
I guess you have a Ouija board and some stuff in your house?
I do have a Ouija board.
Are you Wiccan or?
Yeah, I'm a Wiccan.
You are?
I've been a Wiccan for about 3 years.
What is that?
It's a pagan religion. It's based on nature.
Does it have to do with like moon phases and stuff like that?
Yes, it does. Has a lot to do with moon phase.
That Wiccan stuff, and these ceremonies or whatever you do you have anything like sacrifices or anything?
No, there's no sacrifices.
When there's two full moons, sometimes they'll offer a sacrifice.
Yeah. Well, I don't offer sacrifices ever.
What kind of person do you think it takes to do something like that?
A maniac. Somebody that's out of their mind crazy.
But at that time, they had to let him go.
2 months after a horrific triple murder was discovered in Pensacola, no one has been arrested nor charged. Neighbors on Deerfield Drive are starting to move on with their lives, but say the crime continues to haunt them.
Until over 2 months later, when they arrested him. Actually, around Halloween, funnily enough, the only acceptable time to be a witch, it seems. He was charged with 3 counts of premeditated murder, the evidence being his DNA was found at the scene. Yep, his DNA was found at the place he admitted he went to every week because it was his family home where he cooked dinner. But, to be fair, it was more than that. His DNA was found on places it shouldn't have been. The inside of Richard's belt, on Richard's checkbook, and also, whoever did this cleaned up and placed items in the bin, bloody items. On top of those were cigarette butts with Donald's DNA. So he clearly, must have had a nice relaxing smoke after he, killed his family, so needed to chill.
On Tuesday, July 28th of 2015, you will see that this family was brutally and violently murdered by this defendant.
There's no way that we know who committed these murders. There's no way beyond a reasonable doubt that you could find that Mr. Hartung is guilty of these murders.
The trial went ahead in early 2020. Now, the prosecution, they were thinking, odds here might be kind of hard to prove, about blue moons, blood rituals. That could be a tricky one. The jury, they might not bite. Maybe we should just go with money. That'd be an easier motive to prove in court. Because it was the real motive. Money.
You will see the last will and testament of Von Seal Smith. His mother left everything to his 2 brothers, John and Richard. She specifically excluded him from her will. And what you will see during the course of this trial through evidence is that for him to get anything, they all 3 had to die.
Also, Donald wasn't as close with his family as he'd been letting on. And he held a grudge. See, at the trial, Donald Hartung Jr. took the stand. Jr. said there was an incident when he was 4 years old. John Smith exposed himself to the young boy. Donald got furious. He confronted Von Seal about this, but she took John's side, saying John was special.
Did that incident seem to separate your father from the other 3?
Yes.
This incident left a sour taste in Donald's mouth, and his relationship with his family changed from there onwards, and it would never be the same again. He wasn't that close to his family, and when, in 2012, he was told by Von Seal that him and Junior were out of her will, he was infuriated. Yeah, her will is it seems like Von Seal didn't really give too much of a shit about Donald because his dad was different from Richard and John's. Maybe she hated Donald's dad, but it seems like she definitely hated Donald. I'll read out part of her will here. It's rather cruel. I hereby give, devise, and bequeath to my husband Richard A. Smith, providing he will survive me. But if he does not survive me, then an equal share to my 2 sons, Richard Thomas Smith and John William Smith, to be theirs absolutely. I intentionally make no provision herein to the benefit of my son, Donald Wayne Hartung, not for lack of love or affection, but because he has sufficient assets of his own. So Donald knew he wasn't going to get any money, and if she just died, well, the money would go straight to Richard and John. So he had to make himself, the only surviving member of the family to get that $900,000 that she was worth. Now, there is actually a little bit more about, Wiccan kind of stuff, or magical stuff, whatever you want to call it, involved than just headline-grabbing Blue Moon witchcraft murders. See, while in jail, a man named Marlon Purifoy told the jury he became close with Donald, and Donald admitted to him that he did it.
People were scared of him.
Oh. Why?
They thought he was a witch. We was talking about voodoo, Wicca, and stuff like that. He believed in Wicca, and I told him I believe in voodoo.
Now, did you actually believe in voodoo?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Did Mr. Hartung start talking to you about this case?
Yes, ma'am. He said he killed him.
Did he tell you why?
He said he want the money because she left him out the will.
Not only that, but he said Donald told him specific details too about what happened that night. See, before actually committing the murders, Donald went and sought some advice about whether he should really go through with it or not. He asked the Ouija board. It said yes.
Now, did he tell you if the murders was it just something that kind of happened, or was it something he'd been thinking about?
Well, he said he'd been playing it last 3 to 4 years. He said Ouija board made him go overboard though.
The what? I'm sorry?
A Ouija board.
What about a Ouija board?
He said that really made him do it, made him go overboard.
Then Donald went to the Smith home, and after cooking the dinner, he took down cameras that were installed by Richard inside the home following an accident when Von Seal fell and hurt herself. Those cameras were found in the bin. And after Von Seal, John and Donald finished their food, Donald went to the den area where John was sitting watching television and hit him on the head with a hammer and then cut his throat. Then he went to his mother's room. He tortured Von Seal before killing her in hopes of retracting the safe code. He cut off her pinky finger. Then he did the same as he did to John, hit her in the head with a hammer and cut her throat. Then he waited for Richard to arrive home. As Richard entered through the back door, he shot him in the head, but the shot wasn't fatal. Richard put up a fight. He had defensive wounds on his hands, but in the end, Donald cut his throat as well. Then Donald cleaned up, placed the clothing and other textiles on the bodies, and turned the heating up in hopes of making it hard to determine the exact time of death. During the trial, the defense didn't try to, convince the jurors that Donald didn't do it, but what they aimed to do was end the case in a mistrial. That the inmate wasn't credible, that, it was hard to determine the exact time of death, and that Donald's DNA being found at the house wasn't a sign of anything. Well, the jurors didn't agree, and they found Donald guilty. At his sentencing, he took the stand and told the jury that they had been duped. His representation was not proper, and that this was a grave miscarriage of justice.
Your Honor, I would like to respectfully ask for a mistrial. I love my jury. They paid attention. They paid close attention. But Your Honor, they were duped. You were duped. I was duped and I was tricked, and I'm willing to admit it. And so were you.
Donald got 3 consecutive life sentences, which in this case may as well be, the death penalty. He is imprisoned at Graceville Correctional Facility in Jackson County, Florida. The Wiccan religious, witchcrafty, angle was the big headline grabber in this case. And it got a lot of attention, as you can imagine it would. It's spooky, it's scary, cults, satanic panic, real life black magic, that kind of stuff. And when, in reality, just nothing to do with magic at all, just plain old human greed. Yeah. And a lot of it was actually kind of really blown out of proportion, and sometimes just straight up made up. Like, the bodies laid out in a ritualistic pattern. Bitchware. Throats were cut. Ooh, spooky. I mean, yeah, that's spooky, but it's not exactly, culty or ritualistic. The blue moon had nothing to do with anything. A coincidence they latched onto, as it happens like once every 3 years or something. He asked his Ouija board, but he may as well have asked a magic 8-ball. Should I kill my entire family? My sources say no. Best out of 3? Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Sure, I'll see you as always, real soon in the next one. You know yourself. Till then, take care of yourselves. Mike out.